Shalom and welcome to Genesis chapter 9. There are 29 verses. Verse 1 says here to the humans, to Adam, actually to Noah technically, but to Adam kind, fill the earth and have dominion over it. It doesn't say that in the MT. It says be fruitful, multiply, and replenish. So that's three things. Here it says four things, have dominion over it. That's interesting why they omitted it. I don't know. Verse 2, I have placed them under your power. And the Septuagint, here it says, to your hand are they delivered. So I think that's a big difference. If something is delivered to you, someone delivers something to you, for example, or it's just at your mercy. Whereas when you look in the Septuagint, it's under your power. That can be understood as you have the power to do good or bad, but it's under your power. But we know our responsibility is not to abuse living creatures and plants, but to take care of it. We're really the caretakers in place of Elohim in some ways. Like shepherding, for example, is something that humans do. Verse 3, every reptile shall be meat. This is a very interesting verse because we know from Leviticus 11 that that's not so. If I could pause it. So it says here that all these creatures in the waters that have fins and scales you shall eat. But a lot of reptiles, a lot of amphibians are mostly aquatic and they don't have fins. Yeah, they have scales, a lot of reptiles, but amphibians don't have scales at all. They're smooth. So just by default, pretty much all reptiles and amphibians would be unclean. So that is a big contradiction from what we read here in the Septuagint. So the only way you can rectify this is that you understand that scriptures originally don't have verses. These verse breaks never existed. These are a creation of man, and punctuation as well doesn't exist in the original script, in the original text. So the only way to understand this, or to better understand it, is if you include this with verse 2. So you would read it like this. The dread of and fear of you shall be upon all the wild beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the sky, and on all things moving upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. I have placed them under your power, and every reptile which is living. Period. To think that reptiles are omitted because they're not mentioned in this verse. So does that mean crocodiles, snakes, etc. are no longer, they're not under our power? No. It's just saying, oh, by the way, also these guys are there. So then the next line would read, and it shall be for you. I included and it. I put that in there for it to make more sense. So you can italicize that. And it shall be to you for meat. I've given you all things that are as the green herbs. And I inserted that are as well for it to make more sense. So essentially it's saying you're supposed to live in a plant-based diet primarily. Not that you can't eat meat, but that's your main course is green herbs, such as the green herbs, things that grow from the ground, fruits, vegetables, legumes, wheat, all those things are plant-based. That's your meat. Yeah, you can eat meat, but literal meat, but meat in this context is better understood as food. I've given you for food. I've given you as a meal. Because a diet made up of mostly fleshly meat, that leads to three things: cancer, higher incidence of cancer, higher incidence of high blood pressure, and diabetes. Doesn't say that in the scriptures, but that's something we found out through research, medical research, many decades of studies. You can look it up in I believe it's the China study. Anyhow, verse 6, it says here, he that sheds man's blood, instead of that blood shall his own be shed. So the one who sheds blood, his blood will be shed. But the MT doesn't say that. It says, whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. So that's kind of implying a avenger or revenger of blood, or even implying you can take revenge. It's okay. But we know the scripture says, vengeance is mine. Jehovah Elohim shall repay, will revenge us. So it's saying that the murderer, his blood will be shed. That's the judgment. So that makes more sense. It's more just, it's more fair, and it also eliminates that reasoning that it's okay to take revenge. You kill me, then, or you kill my brother, I'll go kill your brother, kind of thing. And that's what we have going on around the world. Just endless wars, endless revenging. Verse 7 says, dominion, you shall have dominion over it, whereas it says multiply there. And those are two different concepts altogether. They don't mean the same thing at all. Verse 11, talking about the flood, there will not be a flood of water to destroy all the earth. But here it says there will not be a flood to destroy the earth. We know this is false because there have been many floods. There's been a lot of tsunamis. There's been I believe the one in Boxing Day many years ago, killed hundreds of thousands of people. But specifically in the Septuagint, it's talking about a flood that will cause damage, not damage, but that is sent to destroy all life, and specifically saying all the earth, a very destructive flood that destroys all the earth. So that we know floods still happen. So this is false. The statement is false in the Masoretic. Septuagint, it is still true because we're still all here. There hasn't been a flood like that ever since, and never will be again. Verse 14, my bow shall be seen in the clouds, plural. So it says clouds. I will gather clouds, will be seen in the cloud. There's bow. We know that's a rainbow. Whereas in the Masoretic, it says my cloud. So we need to remember that when we do see that rainbow, it is combined with the clouds. That's the sign. The sign isn't only a rainbow, it's the clouds and the rainbow. That's important to know. When my bow is in the cloud, I'll remember the everlasting covenant. So Elohim made that covenant with all flesh on the earth. So that's 14. Verse 21, naked versus uncovered. It says you're naked in the Septuagint, uncovered in the MT. Verse 22 is a very interesting curse. It says here, or not curse, it's interesting action. It says here that covered the nakedness of their father. Okay, so it says that in both. The nakedness of their father. What does that mean? We're going to look at that in a little bit. But many people believe that this is a Hebrewism, that to uncover, to uncover the nakedness of your father means to sleep with your father's spouse. It's according to Leviticus 18. So let's look at that right now. Just ignore all these things popping up. That's going to be annoying. So we're looking at, once it loads, let me just pause it. If we look at verse 8, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. Why? It is your father's nakedness. That's your father's nakedness, is your father's wife. So that's the formula we can use. So if it says here that they didn't see the nakedness of their father, they didn't see their father's wife, essentially. And I know it's easy to just read this and say, okay, Noah was drunk and he was naked in the house. But you can also speculate as well that, you know what, his wife was in the house. His father's nakedness was in the house. Verse 25, a slave versus a servant. It says here, a slave, Canaan will be a slave. And here it just says he's a servant of servants. No, he's a slave, literally a slave. And it says here he's a servant, the servant Canaan, or as it just calls him Canaan. No, he's the servant Canaan, shall be a slave. Okay? Uh, so could it be, I'm just speculating here again, could it be that Canaan was a product of incest? Because we see that it's Ham who saw that naked as his father, which could imply he slept with his own mother and produced Canaan as a result of that incestuous relationship. That's speculation on my part. So Leviticus 18:8 makes it more likely that, yeah, he had sexual relations with not his father, not homosexuality, but as a between his mom, his mother. That's the more likely scenario. He had sex with Noah's wife, his own mother, and we see many parallel stories of this in a lot of ancient religions. Let me just move this over there. Okay. So it says here from Wikipedia, if I could just pause this while it loads. Okay, finally loaded. It says here, mother and son in folklore and mythology. The pattern of a mother goddess coupling with a young male deity was widespread in the entire pre-Aryan and pre-Semitic cultural zone of the Orient, from Southwest Asia to the Eastern Mediterranean. In this pattern, the mother, like a goddess of fertility, was often accompanied by a young male deity who was both her son and later her husband after his father's demise. Well, in this case with Noah, he was still alive. But I submit to you that all of these, not going to read them out, but you can read them yourself, because I'm not supposed to name gods of the other nations with my own mouth. So I'll just highlight them. These names, I believe they originated from this account. They stem from this relationship that Ham had with his mother and created Canaan as a result. Or maybe it was Canaan who had the relationship with the mother, with the grandmother. I don't know, but either way, it was incest, and we know that all of these, and I'm just submitting this to you, all of these have its roots in this account. That's where they all came from. This and this union and that one. So this is Egyptian. I believe this one's Babylonian. I'm not sure what that one is. This one's Greek. And I looked at all these accounts. The majority of them, vast majority, are brother-sister relations. However, many people do believe, and I am led to believe this as well, that Ham, you have Shem, you have the three sons of Noah, and many believe that these are where the three main races came from, basically. Well, not races, but nations. So we have white, black, yellow, essentially. And my understanding is that the white people, or the Europeans, however you want to call them, came from, I believe it's Shem, from Shem. And then you have the Asians coming from Japheth. And then lastly, the Africans, or the blacks coming, or browns, whatever, coming from Ham. And Ham's lineage obviously is Canaan. And that's the one who was doing the incest with his father's wife. If you look at all the stories from Africa, when it comes to this specific folklore and mythology, incest in folklore and mythology, the vast majority come from Africa. Look at that. Isn't that a coincidence? Not really. I don't think so. It says here, mother gets to be fair, it's saying the mother's initiating it, but still, regardless, it's mother and son. So there's many accounts, at least 2, 3. There's another one, Egyptian, which obviously is in the continental Africa. Sudan, you have another one, for a boy and his mother. Actually, no, I don't think this is the boy and the mother. I think it's a sister and a brother. But Ugandans have this story of the mother and the son doing it. And then you have another one in Dogon, wherever that is, incest with their son. And then, before I forget, there's another one in Greece. I believe it's the story of, I'm not going to say the name either. If I can find it, I believe it's in the Greek one. There it is. This person had 12 children, their own son. The name of that planet there, Uranus. So I don't know if that counts as saying a god's name, but anyway, that's the name of the planet. And that's what happened. So we have many accounts and of this mother-son incest going on. I believe that they were inspired in large part by this account where Ham or either Canaan had sexual relations, basically had sex, not relations, but had sex with their own mother/grandmother. And this led to the curse which Noah had put upon Canaan to become a slave to the other two brothers. And we know in history, if we look at history, that yes, the Africans have been slaves for centuries, not only to each other, but also to those descendants of Shem, the European nations, for a long time. And in modern days, if you look at China, they're in many ways slaving Africa, although they're not doing so explicitly, like in a very overt way, but more subtly in terms of economic slavery. So they're lording it over the African nations because China is buying out a lot of parts of Africa and exerting their influence in that way geographically. So I don't know much about the Asian-African relations when it comes to slavery, but perhaps there's more there that I'm just not aware of. So that's today's presentation on Genesis chapter 9. I didn't want to keep it, I wanted to keep it short. Didn't want to have a 30-minute presentation. So just thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful to you in understanding the scriptures more. As you can see, I lean towards the Septuagint because that is the version of the scriptures that Yehoshua and his disciples and believers in the New Testament period had. The Masoretic text didn't appear until 700 years after Yehoshua and wasn't really finalized until 1,000 years after. So you can imagine all the changes that would occur, especially since he had come and had fulfilled many prophecies in the Tanakh. So there's so many pearls of wisdom, so much fine gold that can be found. So I just want to ask that Jehovah bless you all. May he make your ways prosperous. May have his favor, and may you be led to have the love for his Torah, love for him, that you would love him with all your mind, all your strength, all your soul, and to love each other, our fellow Adam, with all your heart, but to love each other as Yeshua loved us. For greater love has no man than this, than to lay down his own life for his friends, for his brother and sister. So thank you, and until next time, Genesis chapter 10 is coming, Yah willing, tomorrow.